The prison transport ship landed with a heavy thud on the metal floor of Throne Station 9. The station was massive, built inside a hollowed asteroid that floated at the edge of Rennery space. It was a place of power, a place of fear, and a place where Commander Velos showed the galaxy what happened to those who broke his laws. Inside the transport, a woman named Yuna sat with her hands bound behind her back. She was 32 years old, born on Earth in a small coastal city called Bizon. She had left her home planet 10 years ago to work as a cargo hauler, moving supplies between colonies and space stations. It was simple work. She liked it. The pay was decent, the views were beautiful, and she got to meet interesting people from all corners of the galaxy. She had not planned to meet the Renari Empire. 3 days ago, her ship had drifted slightly off course while she was sleeping. The navigation computer had made a small error, just a fraction of a degree, but that small error had taken her into Renari territory. She had woken up to warning lights and the sound of alien ships surrounding her vessel. Before she could even send the distress signal, they had boarded her ship and taken her prisoner. Now she was here, wherever here was, waiting to learn her fate. The transport door slid open with a hiss. Bright light flooded in, and Yuna squinted against it. 2 Renari guards stood outside. They were tall creatures, almost 3 meters in height, with hard exoskeletons that looked like armor made of dark blue chitin. They had 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows across their faces, and their mouths were filled with thin, needle-like teeth. Their arms ended in 3-fingered hands with sharp claws. They looked terrifying. Yuna had seen worse. "Move, human," one of the guards clicked. Their language was harsh, full of sharp sounds, but Yuna's translation implant converted it to words she could understand. She stood up slowly, her legs stiff from sitting for so long. "Any chance you guys have a bathroom around here? It's been a really long trip." The guards did not answer. They grabbed her arms and pulled her forward. They walked through long corridors made of black metal. The walls were decorated with strange symbols and images of battle. Yuna saw pictures of the Renari fighting against other species, always winning, always standing over defeated enemies. It was propaganda, she realized. They wanted prisoners to see this. They wanted them to be afraid. Yuna was mostly just hungry. Finally, they reached a massive circular door. It was at least 10 meters tall, covered in gold and silver patterns. The guards pressed their hands against the panel, and the door began to open slowly, revealing what lay beyond. It was an arena. The space was enormous, like a stadium back on Earth, but even bigger. The floor was made of smooth gray stone, and the walls rose up in tiers filled with seats. Thousands of Renari sat in those seats, all of them watching, all of them waiting. Their chittering voices created a constant background noise, like insects in a summer forest. At the far end of the arena, raised high above everything else, was a throne. It was made of something that looked like bone, white and polished, carved with intricate designs. And sitting on that throne was the largest Renari Yuna had ever seen. Commander Velos. He was massive, easily 4 meters tall even while sitting. His exoskeleton was darker than the others, almost black, and it was covered with scars from old battles. Golden bands wrapped around his arms and chest, symbols of his rank and power. His 6 eyes fixed on Yuna as she was led into the center of the arena, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "So," Velos said, his voice booming across the arena, "this is the human who dared to enter Renari space." Yuna looked up at him. "Actually, it was an accident. My navigation computer made a mistake. I can show you the logs if you want." A ripple of chittering laughter spread through the crowd. Velos raised one clawed hand, and the laughter stopped immediately. "It does not matter why you came," he said. "You broke our law. You entered our territory without permission. The punishment for this crime is death." Yuna sighed. She had expected something like this. The Renari were known throughout the galaxy for being aggressive and territorial. They had conquered 17 different species over the past few centuries, building an empire through war and fear. They did not believe in mercy or second chances. "Look," she said, "I'm just a cargo hauler. I move boxes from one place to another. I'm not a spy or a soldier or anything interesting. Can't you just give me a fine or something? I have some credits saved up." Velos leaned forward on his throne, his eyes gleaming with amusement. "You're a brave human. Or perhaps stupid. I have not decided which. But your bravery will not save you. Nothing will save you." He gestured to the floor beneath Yuna's feet. She looked down and noticed for the first time that she was standing on a circular platform about 20 meters wide. The stone was different here, darker, and she could see faint lines running through it like veins. "This is my arena of champions," Velos announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the stadium. "Here, I test the strength of those who oppose me. Here, I show the galaxy the power of the Renari Empire. And here, you will die." Yuna felt a vibration beneath her feet. Something was happening. "You see, human, I do not kill my prisoners with weapons or beasts. That would be too simple, too quick. Instead, I use something far more elegant." Velos spread his arms wide. "Gravity." The word sent a murmur through the crowd. Yuna frowned, not understanding. "Beneath this platform are the most advanced gravity generators in the known galaxy," Velos continued. "With them, I can increase the gravitational force to any level I desire. I have crushed warriors from a dozen worlds in this arena. I have watched their bones break, their organs fail, their bodies flatten into nothing. No creature has ever survived beyond 4 times standard gravity in this chamber." Yuna looked around at the platform, then back up at Velos. Her stomach growled loudly. She really wished she had eaten something before this whole execution thing started. "Before we begin," she said, "any chance I could get a snack? The food in your holding cells was really bad. Like, really bad. I've eaten emergency rations that tasted better." The arena went silent. Every Renari stared at her with wide eyes, unable to believe what they had just heard. This human, facing certain death, was asking for food. Velos blinked all 6 of his eyes, one pair at a time. Then he began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. "I like you, human," he said. "You will die well. Begin at 2 times gravity." The generators beneath the platform hummed to life. Yuna felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. It had begun. He increased gravity to slay the human. The human relaxed and started snacking part 2. The weight of worlds. The gravity generators made a deep humming sound that Yuna could feel in her bones. The air itself seemed to grow heavier as the machines beneath the platform did their work. 2 times standard gravity pressed down on everything within the arena floor. Yuna felt her body grow heavier. Her arms, her legs, her head, everything suddenly weighed twice as much as before. She took a breath, and even that felt harder, like trying to breathe with a weight on her chest. Around the arena, the Renari spectators leaned forward in their seats. They had seen this many times before. They knew what came next. The prisoner would struggle, would fight to stay standing, would eventually collapse as the gravity increased. It was always the same. It was entertainment for them, but Yuna did something unexpected. She bent her knees slightly, adjusted her stance, and then slowly lowered herself to the ground. She sat down cross-legged on the stone platform, resting her hands on her knees like she was about to meditate. "Is something supposed to be happening?" she asked, looking up at Commander Velos on his throne. The crowd went quiet. This was not how prisoners usually behaved. Velos narrowed his 6 eyes. "You feel it, human. Do not pretend otherwise. The gravity in that circle is now twice the standard level. Your body is being crushed. Yuna shrugged, which took a little more effort than usual. I mean, it's definitely heavier. But crushed seems like a strong word. It's more like wearing a heavy backpack. We used to do training like this back on Earth. She was not lying. When she was younger, before she became a cargo hauler, Yuna had trained as a long-distance runner. Her coach had made her train in gravity simulation chambers, increasing the weight gradually to build her strength and endurance. 2 times gravity was tough, but it was not impossible. She had done harder workouts. Velus's confident expression flickered, just for a moment. He gestured to one of his officers, a thin Renari named Threll, who stood near the gravity controls. Increase to 3 times standard gravity, Velus commanded. Threll pressed several buttons on his control panel. The humming from the generators grew louder, deeper. The air above the platform seemed to shimmer as the gravitational force increased. 3 times gravity. Yuna felt the pressure intensify. Her spine compressed slightly, and she could feel the strain in her muscles as they worked to keep her upright, even while sitting. This was harder. This was definitely harder. But she had dealt with worse. She reached into the pocket of her prison uniform. When the guards had searched her, they had been looking for weapons, communication devices, anything dangerous. They had not thought to check for food. Why would they? Who brings snacks to an execution? Yuna pulled out a small wrapped package. It was emergency rations she had taken from her ship before they captured her. Dried fruit and nuts compressed into small bars. Not delicious, but filling. She tore open the package and began to eat. The arena erupted in confused chittering. The Renari spectators looked at each other, unable to understand what they were seeing. This human, under 3 times gravity, was eating snacks like she was watching a movie. This is actually kind of nice, Yuna said between bites. The increased gravity made chewing harder, and she had to be careful not to bite her tongue, but it was manageable. It's like one of those weighted blankets. Very relaxing. Commander Velos rose from his throne. He walked to the edge of his platform, looking down at the human with a mixture of confusion and anger. This was not how things were supposed to go. Prisoners were supposed to suffer. They were supposed to beg. They were supposed to die. What trick is this? He demanded. What technology are you hiding? No species can survive 3 times gravity so easily. Yuna looked up at him, still chewing on a piece of dried mango. No trick. I'm just from Earth. You know, that little blue planet on the other side of the galaxy? We're kind of used to gravity. Threll, the officer controlling the gravity generators, approached Velos nervously. He was smaller than the commander, with a lighter-colored exoskeleton that showed his lower rank. Sir, perhaps this human is defective somehow? Mentally damaged? That would explain why she does not seem to understand the danger she is in. Velos considered this. It was possible. Humans were strange creatures. The Renari had not had much contact with them before, only stories and reports from other species. The reports said humans were weak, fragile, short-lived. They came from a small planet with moderate gravity, moderate temperature, moderate everything. They should not be able to survive this dot, and yet this one was eating snacks. Increase to 5 times gravity, Velos ordered. His voice was cold now, no longer amused. No species survives 5 times gravity. Thrall hesitated. Commander, that level will put significant strain on the generators. We usually reserve it for the final stage of execution. Do it. Thrall bowed his head and returned to his controls. He pressed a sequence of buttons and red warning lights began to flash around the arena. A voice announced in the Renari language that gravity levels were increasing to dangerous levels. Spectators in the lower seats began to move higher, wanting to be further from the gravitational field. The generator screamed 5 times. Standard gravity slammed down on the platform. The stone floor cracked in several places. 2 observation drones that had been filming the execution fell from the air, their motors unable to keep them flying. A decorative banner on one wall tore free from its hooks and crashed to the ground. Yuna felt like a giant hand was pressing down on her entire body. Her lungs worked harder to draw in air. Her heart pumped faster to push blood through her compressed veins. Her muscles burned with the effort of simply existing. She lay down flat on her back. For a moment, the Renari thought she had finally been defeated. But then they saw her put her hands behind her head, like a pillow. She crossed her legs at the ankles. She looked up at the ceiling of the arena, still holding her package of snacks, and continued eating. "You know," she called out, her voice strained but still clear, "back home on Earth, we have athletes who train in gravity chambers way worse than this. My brother Taiho used to do it for fun. He was a wrestler. He said it built character." Velos felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt uncertain. "That is impossible," he said. "Your species evolved on a standard gravity world. You should not be able to survive this." Yuna laughed, which was hard to do under 5 times gravity. "Earth? Standard? That's funny. Let me tell you about my home planet, Commander. We have earthquakes that flatten cities. We have storms that can lift houses into the sky. We have mountains that are so tall you cannot breathe at the top. We have deserts where you can die of thirst in hours and oceans where you can drown in seconds." She paused to eat another piece of dried fruit. "We have animals with teeth that can bite through bone. We have insects that carry diseases. We have plants that are poisonous to touch. And our sun, that big ball of fire in our sky, it gives us cancer if we stand in its light too long." She looked directly at Velos. "We just wear hats." The arena was completely silent now. Every Renari was staring at the human, trying to understand what she was saying. Cancer from sunlight? Poisonous plants? Storms that lifted houses? What kind of planet was Earth? Velos looked at Thrall. Thrall looked back at Velos. Neither of them knew what to do. "Increase to 7 times gravity," Velos said quietly. "Maximum power." Thrall's eyes went wide. "Commander, the generators cannot maintain that level for long. And if she somehow survives—" "She will not survive," Velos said. But even he did not sound convinced anymore. "Do it." The generators began to build power for the final stage. And on the platform below, Yuna finished her snacks and wondered if she should have brought more. He increased gravity to slay the human. The human relaxed and started. Snacking Part 3. The breaking point that did not break. The gravity generators were old machines, built over 200 years ago by Renari engineers who were now long dead. They had been maintained carefully, upgraded when possible, and tested regularly. They were the pride of Throne Station 9, a symbol of Renari power and technological achievement. They had never been pushed to their maximum capacity until now. Commander Velos stood at the edge of his platform, his 6 eyes fixed on the human lying on the arena floor below. She had survived 5 times gravity. She had eaten snacks while doing it. This was not possible. This should not be happening. And yet it was. 7 times gravity, he repeated to Thrall. Now, Thrall's hands trembled as he worked the controls. Warning messages flashed across his screen in bright red letters. The system was telling him this was dangerous. The system was telling him the generators might fail. The system was telling him to stop. He did not stop. He could not. Commander Velos had given an order, and disobeying Velos meant death. The generators were less frightening than the commander. The machines built to their maximum output. The humming became a roar. The floor of the arena shook. Cracks spread across the stone platform like spider webs. The spectators in the lowest rows fled to higher seats, afraid that the gravitational field might extend beyond its boundaries. 7 times standard. Gravity crashed down on Yuna like a falling mountain. She felt every bit of it. Her body, which normally weighed about 60 kilograms on Earth, now weighed over 400 kilograms. Her bones creaked under the strain. Her muscles screamed in protest. Each breath was a battle, her lungs fighting against the weight pressing down on her chest. Her heart worked overtime, pumping blood that felt thick and heavy through her compressed arteries. This was beyond anything she had experienced before. This was beyond anything her training had prepared her for. This was the kind of gravity that could kill. But Yuna was stubborn. She had always been stubborn. Her mother used to say she was born arguing with the doctor. Her teacher said she never knew when to give up. Her friends said she was too proud to admit defeat. They were all right. She lay flat on her back, spread out to distribute the weight as evenly as possible across her body. She breathed slowly, carefully, using techniques she had learned from a meditation instructor years ago. She focused on her heartbeat, steady and strong, and refused to let it falter. The Renari watched in stunned silence. Minutes passed. The generators continued to roar. The platform continued to crack, and Yuna continued to breathe. Then she did something that made every Renari in the arena question their understanding of the universe. She sat up. It was not easy. It was not graceful. It was not graceful. Her arms shook with the effort, and her abdominal muscles burned like they were on fire. But she pushed through the pain, pushed through the weight, pushed through the impossible pressure, and she sat up. The chittering of the crowd became a roar of disbelief. Renari pointed at the human with trembling claws. Some covered their eyes, unable to watch. Others leaned forward, unable to look away. Velos gripped the railing of his platform so hard that the metal bent beneath his claws. "How?" he whispered. Then louder, "How?" Yuna took several deep breaths, each one a victory. Her vision was a little blurry, and she could feel her pulse pounding in her temples. But she was alive. She was conscious. And she was really starting to get annoyed. "You want to know how?" She called up to the commander, her voice strained but clear. "Because I am human. Because we do not know how to quit. Because our planet spent 4 billion years trying to kill us, and we refuse to die." She placed her hands on the cracked stone floor and began to push herself up further. Her legs trembled. Her spine felt like it might snap. Every cell in her body was telling her to stay down, to give up, to accept defeat. She ignored them all, slowly, painfully, impossibly. Yuna rose to her feet. She stood there, swaying slightly. Under 7 times Earth's gravity. Her knees were bent, her back was hunched, and sweat poured down her face. But she was standing. A human being was standing in gravity that should have liquefied her organs. The arena fell completely silent. Not even the sound of breathing could be heard. Every Renari was frozen, their minds unable to process what their eyes were seeing. Thrall dropped his control tablet. It fell to the floor and shattered, but he did not notice. He was staring at the human, his mouth hanging open, his 6 eyes as wide as they could go. "Commander," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Commander, this is impossible. Our scientists said no organic being could survive beyond 6 times gravity. They said the cellular structure would collapse. They said—" "I know what they said," Fellows interrupted. His voice was quiet, dangerous. "I was there when they made those reports. I signed off on their research. And now I am watching a human stand in 7 times gravity." On the arena floor, Yuna took a step, then another. She was walking, slowly, carefully, but walking nonetheless. "You know what's funny?" she said, her voice breathless but still defiant. This isn't even my first near-death experience this week. On Tuesday, my ship's air recycler broke down, and I had to repair it while holding my breath for 3 minutes. On Thursday, I ate something from a street vendor on Station 12 and got food poisoning so bad I thought I was going to die. And now this. She laughed, even though it hurt. Honestly, this is probably only the third worst thing that's happened to me since Monday. Velos felt something cold spreading through his chest. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. It had been so long since he had experienced it. Fear. He was afraid of this human, not because she was strong, not because she was fast, not because she had weapons or technology or armies. He was afraid because she would not break. He was afraid because she refused to accept the reality that she should be dead. He was afraid because if one human could do this, what could 100 do? What could 1,000 do? What could 1,000,000,000 do? Turn off the generators, he said quietly. Thrall looked at him in confusion. Commander? I said turn them off. Velos roared, but Thrall was already shaking his head. I cannot, sir. The systems are overloaded. The shutdown sequence will take several minutes to complete. If I try to force it, the generators might explode. Velos turned back to the arena floor. The human was still standing, still breathing, still alive. She had lifted her arms now and was stretching them, rolling her shoulders, moving like she was preparing for exercise rather than fighting for survival. Mind if I do some exercises while I'm here? Yuna called up to him. Seems like a waste of good resistance training. Before Velos could respond, she dropped to the floor in a push-up position. Her hands pressed flat against the cracked stone. Her body was straight, parallel to the ground. And then she began to do push-ups. 1, she counted out loud. Her arms pushed up, lifting her body against 7 times gravity. 2, she lowered herself down, then pushed up again. 3, the Renari spectators began to flee. They scrambled over each other, rushing for the exits, desperate to get away from this arena and the monster it contained. They had come to watch an execution. They had not expected to witness the birth of a legend. Thrall collapsed against his control panel, his thin legs unable to support him anymore. The gravitational bleed from the arena was affecting even him now, making his body feel heavy and wrong. 4, 5, 6. Velos remained standing, unable to move, unable to look away. He watched the human doing push-ups in gravity that had killed the strongest warriors of a dozen worlds. He watched her muscles flex and strain under the impossible weight. He watched her refuse to die. Commander, Thrall gasped from the floor. The generators. They cannot sustain this output much longer. The core temperature is rising. If we do not shut down soon, then shut them down, Velos said. His voice was hollow, defeated. I told you, sir. The sequence takes time. Several more minutes at least. 7, 8, 9. Velos closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the human was still there, still doing push-ups, still counting. She had reached 15 now, then 20. Then 25? What are you? He asked, his voice barely audible over the roar of the straining generators. What are you people? Yuna paused at 30 push-ups and looked up at him. Her face was red with effort, and her arms were shaking. But she was smiling. We're humans, she said, and you should see what our soldiers can do. The generators finally began their emergency shutdown, and the weight of 7 worlds slowly lifted from Yuna's shoulders. He increased gravity to slay the human. The human relaxed and started. Snacking Part 4. Fear changes sides. The gravity generators shut down with a sound like a dying star. Metal groaned and twisted. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits. Smoke poured from vents in the walls. The ancient machines had been pushed beyond their limits, and they would need weeks of repairs before they could function again. But none of that mattered to the Renari who remained in the arena. What mattered was the human standing in the center of the platform, breathing hard but very much alive. Yuna rolled her shoulders and stretched her neck. Her muscles ached in ways she had never experienced before. Her joints felt like they had been taken apart and put back together incorrectly. Every bone in her body was sore, but she was alive, and that was what counted. "Okay," she said, looking up at Commander Velos. "That was actually a pretty good workout. You should charge money for that. Earth gyms would pay a fortune for gravity training like this." Velos did not respond. He stood frozen on his platform, his 6 eyes fixed on the human below. His mind was racing, trying to understand what had just happened, trying to calculate what it meant for his empire, for his species, for the galaxy itself. The arena was nearly empty now. Most of the spectators had fled during the chaos of the final gravity increase. Only a few remained, mostly officers and guards who were too loyal or too afraid to leave without permission. They stood at the edges of the stadium, watching their commander, waiting for orders. Thrall had managed to pull himself off the floor, but his legs were still unsteady. He approached Velos carefully, not wanting to disturb him, but knowing that someone had to say something. "Commander," he said quietly, "what should we do?" Velos did not answer immediately. He was thinking about history. He was thinking about all the species the Renari had conquered over the past 300 years. The Volanti, who could survive in the vacuum of space. The Korath, who could see in complete darkness. The Mindari, who could communicate through thought alone. All of them had seemed dangerous at first. All of them had seemed impossible to defeat. And all of them had fallen before the might of the Renari Empire. But this human was different. The other species had special abilities, yes, but they also had weaknesses. The Volanti could not handle high temperatures. The Korath were blinded by bright light. The Mindari were physically fragile. Every species had a breaking point, something that could be exploited, something that made them vulnerable. Humans, it seemed, had no breaking point. Or if they did, 7 times gravity was not enough to find it. Velos finally moved. He walked slowly down the steps from his platform, his heavy footsteps echoing in the empty arena. His guards moved to follow him, but he waved them back. He approached the edge of the cracked stone floor, stopping just outside the damaged gravity zone. Yuna watched him come closer. She was tired, exhausted really, but she refused to show it. She stood straight, kept her breathing steady, and met his gaze without flinching. "You should be dead," Velos said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of confusion, a question disguised as words. "Probably," Yuna agreed. "But I'm not. How? How did you survive? What is the secret of your species?" Yuna thought about this question. It was a good question, actually. She had never really considered what made humans special. Back on Earth, they were just people. They lived, they worked, they died, like any other creature. It was only out here, among the stars, that she had started to realize how different they were. "I think," she said slowly, "it's because Earth never wanted us to exist." Velos tilted his head, not understanding. "Our planet is a death trap," Yuna explained. "Everything on Earth is trying to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, the bacteria, even the planet itself with its earthquakes and volcanoes. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by being stubborn, by refusing to die, by adapting to every threat and finding ways to keep going no matter what." She gestured at her own body. "This is what you get after 4 billion years of evolution on a planet that actively hates you. We're built to survive. It's in our blood, in our bones, in every cell of our bodies. You can hurt us, slow us down, even kill us sometimes. But you can never break us. Because the moment you think you've won, we'll get back up and keep fighting." Velos was silent for a long moment. He looked at this small creature, barely half his size, with no natural weapons or armor or special abilities. And he understood, finally, why the reports about humans had been so wrong. The other species had described humans as weak because they compared them to themselves. The Volanti were stronger. The Korath had better senses. The Mindari were smarter. By every individual measurement, humans were average at best. But measurements did not capture what made humans dangerous. You could not measure stubbornness. You could not measure the refusal to give up. You could not measure the spirit that made a small woman do push-ups under 7 times gravity just to prove she could. I have ruled the Renari Empire for 173 years. Velos said slowly. I have conquered worlds and destroyed fleets. I have crushed rebellions and silenced dissent. I have been called the greatest commander in Renari history. He paused, his eyes still fixed on Yuna. And I have never been afraid of anything. Until today. Yuna raised an eyebrow. Afraid of me? I'm just a cargo hauler. I move boxes for a living. Yes, Velos said. Just a cargo hauler. A civilian. Someone with no military training, no combat experience, no special equipment. And you survived something that has killed the greatest warriors of a dozen species. He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. What happens when I face your soldiers, human? What happens when I face the ones who are trained for war? What happens when I face the ones who actually want to fight? Yuna did not have an answer for that. She had never been a soldier. She did not know what Earth's military was capable of. But she remembered stories. She remembered history lessons about ancient battles and modern wars. She remembered how humans had fought against each other for thousands of years, developing weapons and tactics and strategies that made killing more and more efficient. If the Renari ever went to war with Earth, she thought it would not end well for the Renari. Maybe, she said carefully. You shouldn't find out. Velos stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he did something that made every Renari in the arena gasp. He bowed. Not a small bow. Not a nod of acknowledgement, but a full bow, lowering his massive body until his head was below Yuna's level. It was the traditional Renari gesture of respect, reserved for equals and honored enemies. No commander had ever bowed to a prisoner. It was unprecedented. I have made a mistake, Velos said, still bowing. I underestimated your species. I thought you were prey. I was wrong. He straightened up, his eyes meeting hers again. You are not prey. You are something far more dangerous. And I think, for the first time in my life, I need to reconsider my approach to conquest. Yuna was not sure what to say to that. She had come into this arena expecting to die. She had not expected to make the most powerful Renari in the Empire bow to her. So, she said eventually, does this mean I'm not being executed anymore? Velos let out a sound that might have been a laugh. No, human. You are not being executed. In fact, I believe we have much to discuss. About your species. About your planet. About the future. He turned and walked back toward his platform, gesturing for Yuna to follow. Come, we have much to talk about. And I suspect you will want that food you requested earlier. I will have my servants prepare something suitable for human consumption. Yuna followed, her tired legs protesting with every step. She did not know what was going to happen next. She did not know if she could trust this alien commander who had just tried to kill her. But she knew one thing for certain. She was really, really hungry. He increased gravity to slay the human. The human relaxed and started snacking. Part 5. New. Calculations. 3 days had passed since the arena incident, and word had spread throughout Throne Station 9 like fire through dry grass. Every Renari on the station had heard the story by now. Most did not believe it at first. A human surviving 7 times gravity? Impossible. Ridiculous. A joke or a mistake. But then they saw the recordings. They saw the cracked platform. They saw the damaged generators. They saw their commander, the great Velos himself, bow to a small human woman. And they had no choice but to believe. Una spent those 3 days in a guest chamber that was far nicer than her prison cell. The bed was soft, the food was plentiful, and she had access to a private bathroom with actual hot water. It was a significant upgrade from being executed. She spent most of her time sleeping and eating, letting her body recover from the trauma of the gravity trial. Her muscles were still sore, and she had developed some impressive bruises in places she did not know could bruise. But she was alive, and she was healing, and that was enough. On the morning of the 4th day, a Renari servant came to her door with a message. Commander Velos requested her presence in the command chamber. It was time to discuss the future. Una followed the servant through the winding corridors of the station. She noticed that every Renari they passed stopped and stared at her. Some with fear, some with curiosity, some with something that looked almost like respect. She was famous now, apparently. The human who could not be killed. The command chamber was a large circular room at the heart of the station. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing star maps and fleet movements and economic data. Velos sat at the center of the room on a smaller version of his throne, surrounded by advisors and officers. He stood when Una entered. "Human," he said formally. "Please, come forward." Una walked to the center of the room, trying not to feel intimidated by all the alien eyes watching her. She had faced 7 times gravity. She could face a meeting. "I have spent the last 3 days studying your species," Velos said. "I have read every report, every analysis, every piece of information the Renari Empire has collected about humanity. And I have come to a conclusion." He paused, looking around at his assembled officers. "We cannot defeat them." Murmurs spread through the room. Several officers looked shocked. Others looked angry. One younger commander stepped forward. "With respect, sir, this is one human. One. She may have survived the gravity trial through luck or some genetic abnormality. Surely our fleets could handle their military forces." Velos turned to look at the young commander. His gaze was cold and steady. "Do you know what I learned about human military history?" he asked. "They have been fighting each other for their entire existence. Thousands of years of constant warfare. They have developed weapons that can destroy cities in an instant. They have created machines that can kill from distances we cannot comprehend. They have perfected the art of war in ways that make our conquests look like children playing games." He stood and walked toward a holographic display showing Earth, the small blue planet that had produced such impossible creatures. And they have done all of this to each other, to their own species, because they had no external enemy to unite against. Imagine what they will do when they have a common foe. Imagine what they will become when billions of humans work together toward a single goal. The young commander fell silent. He had no response to that. Velos turned back to Una. "This is why I have made a decision. A decision that will change the course of Renari history." He walked forward until he stood directly in front of her. Despite their difference in size, they were equals in this moment. Both knew it. The Renari Empire formally requests an alliance with Earth and the human species. Una blinked. Of all the things she had expected to hear, this was not one of them. "An alliance? You tried to kill me 3 days ago." "Yes," Velos acknowledged. "And you survived. You survived something that should have killed you 10 times over. You showed me that humans are not prey. They are not targets. They are potential allies. Powerful allies. Allies that the Renari Empire would be foolish to make enemies of." He gestured to one of his officers, who brought forward a sealed container. Inside was a data crystal, glowing faintly with stored information. This crystal contains our proposal. Trade agreements, technology sharing, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchanges. Everything necessary to begin a partnership between our peoples. Velos picked up the crystal and held it out to Yuna. I am asking you to bring this to your people, to your leaders, to represent the Renari Empire as our first ambassador to humanity. Yuna stared at the crystal. Me? An ambassador? I'm a cargo hauler. I have no authority. I cannot speak for Earth or the human government. No, Velos agreed. But you can deliver this message. You can tell them what happened here. You can show them that the Renari Empire wishes for peace, not war. The choice of what happens next will be theirs. Yuna thought about this for a long moment. She thought about her life back on Earth, her family, her friends. She thought about her brother Taiho, who would never believe this story. She thought about her mother, who had always wanted her to get a more respectable job. If I do this, she said slowly, if I bring your proposal to Earth, what happens to me? Do I go back to hauling cargo? Velos made that laughing sound again. You can do whatever you wish. But I suspect your life will be different now. You have done something no human has done before. You have made the Renari Empire reconsider its path. History will remember this day. History will remember you. Yuna looked at the crystal again. It was small, no bigger than her thumb, but it contained the potential to change everything. War or peace, conflict or cooperation. The future of two species balanced on this tiny object. She took it. I'll deliver your message, she said. But I'm not promising anything. Humans can be stubborn about these things. Velos smiled, showing his needle teeth. I have noticed. It is one of your most impressive qualities. The meeting ended shortly after. Yuna was escorted to a diplomatic shuttle, a far nicer ship than her old cargo hauler. The Renari loaded it with supplies, gifts, and everything she would need for the journey back to human space. They even gave her a personal communication device linked directly to Velos, so she could contact him if needed. As the shuttle prepared for launch, Yuna sat in the pilot's seat and looked out at the stars. So much had changed in just a few days. She had come to this sector as a simple cargo hauler, lost and captured and condemned to death. She was leaving as an ambassador, carrying a message that could reshape galactic politics. She pulled out her personal communicator and sent a message to her brother on Earth. Hey, Taiho, you are not going to believe the week I have had. Long story short, I accidentally became a diplomat. Also, the food out here is terrible, so save me some of that kimchi stew. I will explain everything when I get home. Tell Mom I said hi. Oh, and you know how you always said my stubbornness would get me in trouble. Well, it kind of saved my life this time. Guess you were half right. She put away the communicator and started the launch sequence. The shuttle lifted off from Throne Station 9 and headed toward human space, carrying its precious cargo and its unlikely ambassador. Behind her, Commander Velos watched the ship disappear into the darkness. He had ruled the Renari Empire for nearly 2 centuries. He had conquered species and crushed rebellions and built a legacy of power and fear. But today, he had done something new. He had chosen peace over war. He had chosen cooperation over conquest, and it was all because of a stubborn human woman who would not die. Sir, Terrell said, approaching him nervously, do you truly believe this alliance will work? Humans are so different from us. Velos turned away from the viewport. Different, yes. But perhaps that is what makes them valuable. We Renari have always measured strength by what we can destroy. Humans measure strength by what they can survive. Perhaps there is wisdom in that approach. He walked back toward his command chamber, his officers falling into step behind him. Send word to all Renari fleets, he ordered. Human ships are to be treated as allies, not targets. Any commander who attacks a human vessel without provocation will answer to me personally. Yes, sir, Thrall said, already entering the commands into his tablet. Velos paused at the entrance to his chamber and looked back at the stars one more time. A new era begins today, he said quietly. An era of partnership instead of conquest. An era where the Renari Empire grows through friendship rather than force. It will not be easy. Many of our people will resist the change, but it is necessary. He turned and walked into his chamber, ready to face the challenges ahead. And somewhere in the vastness of space, a small shuttle carried a tired cargo hauler toward home, with a message of peace in her pocket and a story that would be told for generations to come. The human who would not break. The woman who changed everything. Yuna